Now that we have our camera solve completed, we can move on to a few other tasks. In this module, we're going to take a look at checking the actual quality of our camera solve in a more real-world way. We're also going to take a look at using something called the point cloud generator to create a more accurate point cloud. And we're going to take a look at actually generating a mesh out of that point cloud. So let's go ahead and jump back into Nuke and get started. So back here in Nuke, I went ahead and stepped back just a tiny little bit from where we left off in the last module. I went ahead and deleted the export that we made because I'm actually going to export something a little bit lighter. Rather than exporting out that entire scene plus, all I'm really going to export out is just a scene. I also want to turn off my link output. The reason is that these files can get a little heavy and slow down a little bit, as you've noticed, especially during the autosave when the camera tracker is in the actual scene. So I'm going to turn this off and just basically bake out that data into the camera files, and that way I can delete this camera tracker, and if I ever need it, I have plenty of saves. I could always come back and retrieve it. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off link output here, hit create, and here we are. Here's our point cloud and our camera. Now, once I do delete this camera tracker, we will actually lose the point cloud. It is getting the data from there right now, but as you'll see in a little bit, that won't actually be a big deal. I will leave it for right now though. So let's see what we have. I'm going to jump here into our 3D view, double click the scene so that we have our point cloud and our camera. All looks good. We've already tested this in the past, but what I'd like to do is very briefly show you how we can actually set up what you saw in the Scene Plus, where we actually have the renderer rendering the point cloud on top of our footage. So it's actually quite easy to set up. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to clear all that out there, and I'm going to create myself a scanline render node. So I'll hit Tab, type in scan, and there's our scanline render node. So the first thing I'm going to want to attach is the camera to this cam pipe over here. I also want to attach an object or scene. Now at the moment it doesn't matter whether I attach directly to the camera tracker or the scene because the only object really in the scene other than the camera is the point cloud, but I'll still attach to the scene regardless. And to the background I want to attach to my footage. Go ahead and move some of this stuff out of the way. I also don't really need this roto here. I can move that out of the way as well. And I'm going to pipe this all the way back to my original footage. I'll also hold Control and create myself a joint here, just to kind of keep that a little bit cleaner. Okay, and if we view this now, let's go ahead and jump into our 2D view. You can see that we've basically accomplished exactly what that other export method, the Scene Plus, had shown us. We now have, excuse me, we now have all of these points directly on top of our footage being rendered out. This does give us a pretty good idea of the quality of the track. However, we want to maybe see it in a slightly more real-world way. I want to actually put a piece of geometry in here and see if it actually looks like it's moving with the actor's head. So just to kind of keep things simple, I'm just going to, it's going to look a little silly, but I'm going to put a cube on his forehead. And I want to see, without any of these tracking markers, does the cube look like it's sticking? So, and of course you can do any type of geometry you want. You could also do some more complex shape, but this will get the idea across. So I'm going to come over here to my 3D geometry and create a cube. There. If we go ahead and jump into the 3D view, you'll see our cube appears right there. I'm going to go ahead and connect the cube into our scene. That way it can all show up at once. And I probably also want to put something on the cube that's going to make it a little bit easier to see. Right now it's just this flat shaded white color. So I'm going to create a texture. So probably just a checkerboard. So there's our checkerboard. We'll go ahead and attach that. So it'll just give us, again, something that's going to be a little easier to see. So now using this point cloud as kind of a guide, I'm going to try to position this cube on top of the actor's, well, not necessarily on top, but kind of almost attached to the actor's forehead, just kind of like that. I'll use these handles here to kind of shrink it down a little bit. Okay, bring it in to the sides. All right, and I can even hold Control, maybe rotate it a bit to help the alignment. And again, I can't be 100% sure if this is directly on his forehead. Of course, our points aren't very even, but that may be at least decent enough for us to be able to tell what's going on. All right, so let's go ahead and make sure this is now all hooked up into the render. If I take a look at the render here, we'll jump into our 2D view. Let's bring this back down. You could see the cube is in fact appearing. Kind of cancel that out there. And you could see there's the cube, and the cube, looks like it's attached to his forehead. Now, I don't necessarily want to see this, all of the point clouds, so I can go ahead and disable those. There we go. And now we can just kind of view it based on just that cube. So let's go ahead and put them kind of roughly centered. I could see the cube is not exactly where I ideally want it. All right. Again, another reason we'll be removing those. This is not working here. I'm going to jump to my 3D view, but that's another reason we'll be removing the tracker, 3D camera tracker, just so it doesn't really slow down like that all that often. There we go. Yeah, the cubes are a little annoying. These handles kind of get in the way sometimes. There we go. That was way more difficult than it needed to be. And I might push that towards the head a little bit more. Sin is not being my friend. There we go. All right. Let's jump back to our 2D view. We'll go ahead and actually might widen this back out a little bit now. Let's go ahead and disable that point cloud again. Okay. So I think this will be something decent enough for us to preview with. I may actually also reduce the amount of checkers over here. So, oops, we should go the other way. Make the checkers larger. Just be a little bit easier to track it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit play here. Let this buffer out, and that way we'll be able to see if this looks like it's kind of roughly sticking to the actor's head. I'll go ahead and pause while that happens. Okay, here's our result, and you could see it looks pretty good. That really does look like it's sticking right onto his forehead. Now, you may have noticed that it was quite a bit of work just to figure out where this box needed to be placed, and this was a very generic placement. It's just a cube roughly sitting on his forehead. Now, imagine if we wanted to actually get something like that Two-Face effect or Terminator effect where it's very, very delicately wrapped around certain parts of his face, obviously holes maybe in certain parts of the face, hollow areas. That's not going to be very easy to do right now because we don't have a very good surface to work with. It's just some points in space. So while our track is done, we're going to kind of change directions of the course now and look at actually trying to use this track to help us recreate the surface of the face. Not necessarily for modeling and rendering purposes. We don't want a perfect version of his face. His face is already there. We just want a fairly accurate representation of the face so that we can actually use that to build either digital prosthetics or place objects. So we're pretty much done here in this clip. The track looks good. In the next clip, we'll take a look at how we can try to get a more accurate point cloud to aid us in creating that geometry for his face. So see you guys in the next clip.